Airbus formally launched the A3XX program on December 19, 2000 in Toulouse. The program was later christened the A380, and it promised to dominate long-haul hub operations with a nominal 555 seats across 2 full-length decks. Initial program estimates hovered in the low teens of billions of euros. The contrast between promised hub economics and the eventual program termination in 2019 would become one of aviation's most expensive lessons. Airbus's launch press release and Reuters coverage captured the optimism, but ETOPS expansions and twin-engine efficiency gains were already undermining the 4-engine logic. At the heart of the superjumbo, miles of wiring harnesses waited to be routed. The wiring would be the first sign. June 12, 1994, Seattle. Boeing's 777 entered service with United Airlines under expanding FAA-ETOPS rules, and it redefined what twin-engine aircraft could achieve on long-haul routes. Airbus had bet heavily on the 4-engine A340 family for range and redundancy. Boeing doubled down on twins. The A340-300, A340-500, and A340-600 variants offered intercontinental reach, but they carried a fuel burn penalty. The 777-200ER and 777-300ER delivered comparable range with 2 engines instead of 4. FAA-ETOPS rulemaking dockets from 1997 and 2007 documented the steady march from 180-minute to 330-minute diversion limits. The 777-300ER could fly roughly 7,370 nautical miles. Operators reported the A340-600 burned 8 to 12% more fuel per seat mile than the 777 on similar missions. Airbus engineers argued that 4 engines meant safety and flexibility. Boeing's finance teams countered with operating cost spreadsheets. By 2000, the superjumbo plan looked inevitable. On December 19, 2000 in Toulouse, Airbus gave the green light to the A3XX, soon renamed the A380, with anchor customers touting hub-and-spoke dominance and unprecedented passenger capacity. Emirates, Singapore Airlines, and Qantas signed early memoranda of understanding. Break-even assumptions rested on high production cadence and sustained demand. The A380-800 would be powered by either the Rolls-Royce Trent 900 or the Engine Alliance GP7-200. Airbus's press kit and Reuters launch briefs captured the mood. Target production sat around 30 aircraft per year. Initial orders and commitments approached 50 frames. List price guidance hovered near $300 million per unit. Inside the program, 2 design toolchains, CATIA V4 in Hamburg and CATIA V5 in Toulouse, were being used in parallel across national sites. Engineers assumed data would translate seamlessly. 2 design toolchains would not speak the same language. On June 13, 2006, in Toulouse and Hamburg, wiring harness mismatches and design tool divergence triggered delays that lasted multiple quarters, and they sent shockwaves through EADS and the global aerospace supply chain. CATIA 5, 4 and V5 data structures proved incompatible between Germany and France. Electrical harnesses designed in one system did not align with digital mock-ups built in the other. Chief Executive Officer changes followed. Share prices slumped. EADS statements in June and October 2006 confirmed the scale of the problem. Reuters reported the stock dropped roughly 25% in a single day. The delay stretched to approximately 2 years. Billions in cash flow evaporated. An impossible statistic emerged. A single integration gap erased years of schedule across a 500-seat jet. Production slots shifted. Suppliers scrambled. Airlines reconsidered orders. The market moved while the harnesses were rerouted. On October the 25th, 2007, in Singapore, the first A380 entered service with Singapore Airlines as Boeing's 777-300ER orders accelerated and 787 backlogs swelled worldwide. The service debut was celebrated with champagne and global media coverage, but competitive momentum belonged to efficient twin jets. The A380-800 carried passengers in unprecedented comfort. The 777-300ER and the 787-8 and the 787-9 carried them more cheaply. Flight Global covered the inaugural flight in detail. Boeing orders data told a parallel story. A380 orders stood at roughly 180 by 2008. The 787 net orders exceeded 900 by the same year. The 777-300ER led in seat mile costs on long-haul routes. Operators reported fuel burn advantages that translated directly to bottom-line savings. Airlines were voting with their checkbooks. Airbus had built a technological marvel. The market wanted operational efficiency. Then a single engine made global headlines. On 4 November 2010, in Batam Island airspace, Qantas flight QF32 suffered an uncontained Rolls-Royce Trent 900 engine failure shortly after takeoff. The failure prompted emergency inspections and temporary groundings across the A380 fleet. The safety response was swift and contained, but perception costs mounted. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency issued Emergency Airworthiness Directive 2010-0236-E within days. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau opened investigation AO 2010-089 and later published a comprehensive final report. Qantas released statements outlining inspection hours per engine and fleet-wide borescope requirements. Revenue impact guidance appeared in quarterly filings. The A380-800 and its Trent 900 power plant were scrutinised under harsh light. No fatalities occurred. The aircraft returned to service after thorough inspections. But the incident reinforced doubts about fore-engine complexity and the maintenance burden. Regulators moved quickly. Financiers took notes. Orders slowed. On 17th November 2013 in Dubai, Emirates pressed Airbus for an A380neo variant at the Dubai Air Show, even as oil prices began their slide in 2014, and the return on investment from re-engining looked thin beyond a single buyer. Concentration risk around Emirates had become acute and undeniable. Airbus hesitated to commit to a neo. The A380 neo concept and Trent 900 advanced engine studies circulated in internal briefings. Reuters and Flight Global interviews with Emirates and Airbus executives captured the tension. Emirates represented more than half of all A380 orders, an impossible statistic for any widebody program. Proposed cabin enablers could add 40 to 80 seats through denser configurations, but the business case required scale. Scale required customers. Customers were not lining up. Production would be cut again. On 12th July 2016 in Toulouse, Airbus trimmed A380 output to 12 aircraft per year, then to 8 per year, and finally to 6 per year by 2018, as new orders dried up and existing customers deferred deliveries. Rate cuts, cabin enablers, and cost-focus initiatives signalled end-of-line dynamics. The A380 production system was being wound down in slow motion. Airbus press releases from 2016 to 2018 documented each reduction. Reuters reported on rate cut announcements and their financial implications. Delivered frames began to outnumber the remaining backlog. Program accounting hits mounted in quarterly statements. Airbus industrial capacity stood ready. Airline demand did not materialise. The business case was collapsing. Production was winding down and the program was collapsing. A trade case added friction to transatlantic deliveries. On 2nd October 2019 in Geneva, the World Trade Organization authorized $7.5 billion in United States tariffs on European Union goods, including Airbus aircraft, in the long-running subsidy dispute. The European Union countered in 2020 with its own measures. Subsidy rulings escalated delivery costs and injected politics into every transatlantic sale, though A380 exposure to the United States market remained minimal. The WTO dispute DS316 covered Airbus. The United States Trade Representative imposed 10 to 15% aircraft tariffs. The European Union launched DS353 countermeasures. WTO rulings, USTR and EU notices, and Reuters and the Associated Press coverage documented the escalation. The tariffs impacted A320 and A350 economics more than the superjumbo, but the broader message was clear. One customer pivot would decide the superjumbo's fate. On the 14th of February 2019 in Toulouse, Airbus announced the end of A380 production after Emirates reduced its order and switched capacity to the A350 and the A330neo, removing the last pillar supporting the program. The termination decision triggered write-downs and supplier fallout across Europe. The A380-800, the A350-900 and the A350-1000 and the A330neo represented the pivot. Airbus's press release on the 14th of February 2019, along with Reuters and the BBC coverage, marked the moment. Total A380 deliveries would reach approximately 251 frames. Break-even was never achieved. Final deliveries were scheduled for 2021. An impossible statistic crystallized. A flagship widebody ended with roughly 251 frames versus early break-even expectations of 400 or more. The superjumbo that was meant to dominate hubs for decades would fly for barely more than one. Then long-haul demand collapsed. On 20th of May 2020 in Paris and Frankfurt, Air France retired its entire A380 fleet as the pandemic crushed traffic. Lufthansa stored most of its superjumbos with no clear return date. The secondary market vanished overnight. Cargo conversions proved impractical due to the aircraft's structural design and economics compared to the 777F and the 747-8F. Airline press releases, Cirium fleet data, and Aviation Week analysis documented the exodus. Active A380 operations fell to single digits in 2020. Impairment charges appeared in carrier financial filings. Airline chief financial officers weighed asset values against the Airbus program legacy. The A380 had been designed for a world of packed hubs and steady growth. That world disappeared in weeks. A final superjumbo would still roll out. On 16 December 2021, in Hamburg and Finkenwerder, Airbus delivered the last A380 to Emirates, as workers who had spent careers on the line watched the final frame roll out under cold December light. The final structural join had been completed months earlier in a ceremony attended by engineers and technicians. Line closure was formalised. Workforce reallocation to the A321XLR and A350 programs began immediately. The A380-800, A321XLR and A350-900 and A350-1000 represented the future. Airbus delivery footage and reports from Reuters and Flight Global captured the handover. Final unit count stood at 251 aircraft. Production rate dropped to 0 from 2022 onward. A321XLR entry into service timeline targets were set for 2023. Airbus had stated in its 2019 release that it would cease deliveries in 2021. Airbus had already chosen a different play. On October the 16th, 2017, in Mobile and Toulouse, Airbus took a 50.1% stake in Bombardier's C-Series program for $1, renaming it the A220 and establishing a US assembly line in Mobile, Alabama, to neutralize tariff threats. The pivot to small, narrow-body efficiency was strategic and decisive. The A220-100 and the A220-300, the mobile final assembly line, and the ITC case on the C-Series formed the backdrop. Airbus and Bombardier statements, the ITC 2018 ruling, and coverage in Reuters documented the transaction. A modern jet program transferred for approximately $1, and the backlog grew to more than 900 orders by the mid-2020s. Mobile line ramp plans accelerated. The transfer reshaped the 100 to 150 seat market. An impossible statistic, but the superjumbo bet was already sunk. On June 15, 2021, in Brussels and Washington, the European Union and the United States agreed to a 5-year truce on aircraft subsidies as Airbus consolidated its strength in efficient twins and single-aisle families, leaving the A380 chapter closed. The strategic legacy was clear. Airbus lost the superjumbo bet, but emerged with leadership in the A321neo, the A321XLR, and the A350-900 and the A350-1000. Boeing's 787 and the 707X context provided the competitive frame. The EU and the US joint statement, company annual reports and investor updates, and coverage in Reuters and Bloomberg captured the resolution. The A321neo backlog led the narrow-body mix. A350 utilization recovered as traffic returned. Boeing's 707X delays persisted, according to released data. Airbus's market mix versus Boeing's widebody cycle defined the new equilibrium. In reports, the line was closed. In hangars, lessons remained tagged. The A380 story isn't just about a failed aircraft program. It's a case study in how even the world's most sophisticated aerospace manufacturers can misread the market when they bet against technological progress. Airbus assumed hub and spoke dominance would last forever. They assumed 4 engines would remain acceptable to airlines. They assumed ETOPS would not keep expanding. Every assumption proved wrong. Boeing made the opposite bet with the 777 and the 787 and won. But Airbus didn't lose everything. The A220 acquisition for $1 gave them the small single aisle they desperately needed. The A321XLR became the most successful narrow-body variant in history. The A350 challenged the 787 successfully. Airbus survived their most expensive mistake by pivoting faster than Boeing could capitalize. In aviation, the biggest victories don't always go to those who never fail. They go to those who learn fastest from failure.